Anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Review the district's draft fiscal year 25-26 operating budget.
All right. We're gonna have 4 documents we're gonna look at. I go back and forth. First two is the budget memo and then the proposed budget itself. And then, we're gonna kind of go back and forth between this map, and this little chart here. So if you could get those out. First off, the budget memo has, some information, general information on just how the budget went together. And it's a little bit pared down from previous years, but one of the things that we did was modify the actual format of the budget to what we did was take out the monthly look and each of the months out, condensed it so that we could put the comments out on the same page. So you weren't having to kind of go back and forth. We're trying to make it a little easier to read, but we also looked at putting in comments for items that were plus or minus 10%. So we've done that. Obviously on the front side is revenue, and then also the administrative expenses going through. The big items that we want to talk about are on the back page in the tan colored area. And before we go into those in specific, I want to pull out this map. And if you don't have one, there's extra copies here. As we've been talking about for the past 8 or 9 months, we've been going through every ditch in the woodlands and assessing, collecting data on all the assets of the ditches, collecting data as to their condition, and cataloging that in our GIS system and building that. And so the results of that, this is a map. There will be a more comprehensive summary of each of the dots with pictures and kind of a follow along booklet that you'll be able to see. But I wanted to give you some something to look at for, at least for the budget. We identified the areas of interest within the asset class for the ditches. And keep in mind, we're looking at backslope interceptors and piping, storm sewer outfalls, the ditch itself, drop structures, siltation, vegetative overgrowth, other structures within the ditches. All those types of assets are these dots. There's about 1,700. There's about 1,700 assets on this map. We're probably going to change the color because green doesn't necessarily mean good. It just means it's a 1. So as I put down on this summary here, kind of describes what how we looked at the ratings. 0 would be we've just identified the asset. 1 is a area of interest, but it's still in pretty good shape. Just something to keep in mind or keep an eye out for the future. 2 is it's starting to deteriorate or starting to be an issue. Probably not an immediate need to address it, but we're going to look at each annually or throughout the year. And 3s were listed as those things that really need immediate action. And so we collated those items into this summary. And on this summary, you'll see you have 7 storm sewer outfalls. Keep in mind, the storm sewer outfall is a pipe that's coming from the neighborhoods or the commercial areas. It's collecting rainwater from those areas, going downstream to the next biggest pipe, and keep going until it gets to the ditch. And then the outfall is that last piece of pipe that ties into the ditches. And then backslope interceptors you have 6 of those on the 3 conditions, and those would be backslope interceptors, and interceptor piping are those pipes that are tied to the maintenance berm swale on top of the ditches, and those like rainwater that falls on top of the ditch and possibly from adjacent properties, so that the moving water doesn't erode the banks of the ditch. So that's what a backslope interceptor is. And then we also also identified some linear footage of vegetative growth that needs to be pushed back. A lot of these trees that are on the edges of the right of way have grown ditch, and some are causing us not to even be able to access the maintenance berms, or the mowers have to struggle to get around some of the overgrowth. So that's what the vegetative overgrowth means. We took all those that I just mentioned, and then we plugged them into the budget. Those two big items are in 5300.12 and 5300.14. The 7 storm sewers and the 6 backslope interceptors are in there. Also included is the vegetative overgrowth, basically pruning and trimming of trees that are overhanging into the right of way. We also recommended to the trustees to build a designated ditch crew that would go in and do some of this work, and then the equipment necessary to allow them to do that work. There are some of the piping, the bigger piping and deeper items. We're not going to be able to do that, so we'll utilize contractors that help us regularly to tackle some of the bigger projects, but we'll be able to kind of keep up with some of the small things. Those are the two larger additions to the budget. Up above at 5303, we have some engineering and technical services. We're going to bring the rate study consultant back in this next fiscal year and have that updated. And also, on every 5 years, we have for TCQ and EPA, so we'll be tackling that for all the months next year. Let's see. Water distribute sewer repair. You have the ongoing sanitary sewer project that is that we got good bids on. That's in there. Some reductions due to the billing software switchover. So overall, the majority of the changes are related to that ditch fund that we're proposing.
Quick question, is the sheet that was up here, the reserves, the cash reserves, different from what was emailed to us? No, same. I have my copy from home, but it seems like a different number there.
Yeah, that brings up a point though. The cash reserves that this creates, and by the way, that we're going to put it on this stuff abbreviated like we do on the Access one. That was one of the things we noticed on this week that will change for the final. 6.7 million was the ending cash reserve with this budget at 14.9 months. That's what that generated at that tax rate with these expenses in it.
One of the disadvantages of doing the budget first is we have these other issues that I believe need to be discussed in order to arrive at a yes or no or adjustment on this budget. So let me start by talking about one of them, their branch repair. I would like to recommend, as far as MUD 67 is concerned, that we put aside the cash reserve, make a formal entry out of it, to cash fund those corrections. That doesn't mean we have to. That just gives the option to the board to do that, and the funds would be set aside and not encumbered in any other way.
Sure.
And so I began looking at that option page. I got a little sidetracked on the number of SFDUEs, which brings up the second question. What's the status of the SFDUE report or study?
Yeah, so we're working on that. We should hopefully be done in the next month or so on that. But that has wouldn't have any.
Well, the numbers change significantly between option 1 and option 2. They go, in our case, from like 2,000 to 5,000. And why? What is that? Is that a new baseline, a new method of evaluating?
No, the current pro rata share of the 5 stakeholders is based on the connections related to the drainage area that feeds that system. So if you then bring in other participants that have zero impact, then you have to reevaluate the pro rata in a different way. So
What's the different way? Because I don't know how we go from 2,600 to 5,000 in our case.
right. So you would add in a bunch of zeros for the other guys that aren't participating any water to the system. And that you can't do. So you would have to utilize a different metric. So the different metric would be bring in total connections. That's why some of the existing shareholders numbers would go up in terms of their SFUEs.
The last time,
Overall participation should go down. With the
Yeah, for sure.
It's
If it were 5-0, most definitely. And then the other piece of this that's kind of in flux right now is, at the, and this was on the agenda to talk about later, but at the July 21st meeting, at the end of that meeting, it was talked about possibly having some additional participants. And so that's on the agenda of all of the months this month, including the non-stakeholders, to contemplate whether or not they would be interested in participating. And we've had 4 out of 5 of those so far, at least want to look at the numbers. And so there's been no no's, there's been some maybes, and a couple maybe firmer than maybe, I'd say, in my estimate. So in order to kind of get through the overall cost sharing of that to give you a real number, we still have to work through that. And a couple of them are in a situation where, they don't have any land mass anywhere near the facilities, nor are they downstream. They wouldn't be affected. So the dialogue has been, well, I like the idea of participating in the community, but maybe not to this full degree because I don't. So you might see a couple, and candidly, another one may say, love to also, but I don't have enough cash to, fund this particular amount. So in those cases, those individual MUDs may decide to say, sure, I'll do it, but it may be at a lesser amount than the rest.
So Paul, if kind of what you're ultimately driving at is to not over reflect the operating reserve, because you're going to have costs associated with the project, then the conservative route would be to, if you're going to set aside funds for that to reduce your unencumbered operating reserve, would be take the larger number, take what it is if nobody else participates.
exactly.
Take the 836.
So my phone call to Maureen was add 836,000 to that reserve, which is the worst case analysis. And what is the resultant cash, number of months cash available if we were to do that? I'm sorry.
11.3.
Still fine.
That's a good idea. Yeah. So do you make a motion on that, or is just what we did?
I'd make a motion that we,
I will acknowledge there's a lot of parts because there's that, obviously there's tax rate to discuss. There's also all these other big projects that are coming, through and trying to figure out how all those play in.
So there's not an action item on the budget today. I think maybe we keep that in mind for next month when we adopt the budget. That is part of the, you ask staff when they prepare the finalized budget to pull the 836 or 837 out. So your reserve has the lower number shown on there, and then you would be approving the budget next month with the lower number. And also
in the sixth and final accounting, there were two MUDs that were cash contributors to that. And it was Metro and MUD 67, and ours was in excess of $1 million. So I'm concerned that we get another surprise.
And while we're on the topic, I visited with Ed. Is there any chance of SJRA bond funding this and letting the MUDs cover that debt service somehow?
There's
Over a
always,
period of time.
there's always that chance, Jim.
Here's just from a philosophical standpoint, I've been here 30 years. I've been paying for that system completely. And now you're asking me to fund it again it'll last another 50 to 100 years. And it just hits me a little bit that when we have an option to fund it over a period of time and let people that are coming into the Woodlands, new folks, cover that expense.
Jim, I think we're going to have plenty of opportunities to make those kind of judgments and discussions with wastewater treatment plants. And
We are, but it applies to this as well.
Pipeline projects.
Same philosophy applies to me when you're rehabbing something this expensive that it's going to last another 50 to 100 years. Just philosophically, I like the idea of municipal finance.
with
To
the
spread that cost over a
with the
period.
one-time costs involved, I'd pay it if you don't have to. That's where I'm going with the bond. Well, like you said, we don't have to vote on that today. That's
Did you
a
answer on the SFDUE study? I missed it, sorry.
We're working on it and it should be done in the next
And
month. or
next
so.
month or so.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll make this an item for next
Yeah.
month's meeting.
Yes.
But what you see next month, we'll have that number pulled out when the reserve is calculated at the end of the fiscal year.
So on the budget, a couple of questions, if I might, on this 5,300.12 and 0.14, how do those numbers compare to the other MUDs? I mean, are we average, low, high?
Well, you can compare, this is somewhat direct comparison.
Yeah.
And then, keep in mind, there's some future expenses on the ones and two. The twos are gonna become ones or threes someday, and the ones will become twos and threes someday, but that's much further down the line. In terms of this budget, you are kind of in the middle. There's a couple districts, 1, 2, 3 districts, I guess, that are higher in terms of just overall expense. There is somewhat of a correlation between age of the facility and these improvements. I mean, generally speaking, we did see some variation in that, but typically speaking, the older ditches had more overgrowth and had worse pipes.
You expect that?
Right. These are metal pipe, corrugated metal pipe, and just over
With the
time.
newest MUD, and we're considerably higher than some of the older ones.
I don't know about the ditches in particular.
Were you referring to the vegetation, Paul?
I'm referring to this sheet. That's what I was referring to, right?
Yeah, the outfalls were
The outfalls is
about in the middle also. So was pretty much outfalls, back slopes, vegetation. You were all kind of right in the middle.
Yeah.
In terms of expense.
It's not just gonna be age, it's gonna be the area, isn't it?
Mhm.
Number of infrastructure points, or what do you call those?
asset points.
Asset points. There you go. Thank you.
Anything else, Eric?
No, there's no approval this month, just we will approve it, the budget next month. So if there's any other questions that come up, let me know.
I had one question on the document that's Green put out, okay, so on page 2, on the administration fee, it's a small thing, but are we proposing to have less connections on the table there? The rate's going up, but it didn't go up proportionally here. My math bad. Okay, maybe I misunderstood. I thought the tax administration fee annually was based on the number of connections and the administration.
It's based on the number of parcels and 50% value. It's a 50/50 blend.
Okay, okay,
So it's not, you can't go, this parcel's not connections, which is different.
gotcha. Okay,
And value.
and value.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. This was one, didn't make sense. Not just connections. Thank you.
Moving on, item 9.
Excuse me, before we go to item 9, can I make a request, Mr. President?
Yes.
I would like us to move item 17 in front of item 9 now and ever thereafter. 17 reflects what we're going to do in 9, being district, where we are as a district development. This makes more sense to put it in front, so then when we talk about tax rate, we're all on the same page. Just
We actually talked about putting it in future years just under the consent.
that was my request.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes to the consent agenda unless you've got some, significant change where you're jumping from one status to another. And none of the districts this year are changing status, so.
I would argue not to put in the consent because so much of it depends on what we yet do not know about SFDUs. There's a study going on. As I mentioned, we may be surprised. I don't think it's going to change us, but I'd sure like to leave that open for discussion. do a more deep dive into SFUEs.
We can deal with that in the future, just saying, talked about moving it from where it is today, but the rest of the board's okay moving the item up right now, then we would do that before we receive the items.
Can we do that?
Everybody's agreeable.
Okay,
Okay.
All right,
Objection.
item 17. Yes.
All right, so we do have the developed district status resolution in your packet. It includes the typical Exhibit A from the engineer, and your status for this year has not changed. You remain a developing district for 2025. I think you'll see with the recommendation from Adam and staff on your tax rate, it really doesn't matter because you're not going over. The whole point of developed district status is to determine what is your rollback rate. And so the only time it matters is if you are not sure if you're on the edge of developing versus developed, and you're going to be levying a tax rate that's over 3.5%. Well, am I going to be subject to that automatic rollback election? That's not the issue here. So frankly, it's an administrative exercise that we have to go through, but it doesn't have a functional impact on what's being presented for you to consider on your tax rate.
But for the future, I would like to recommend that when this is presented, that there be a data table that's associated with it that shows us exactly where we are, rather than just saying, oh, by the way, you're only less than 95% of 95935, which means, what does that mean? Show us where MUD 67 is in terms of its.
The engineer prepares that.
I'm just making a suggestion that in the future to have an appendix or an attachment that shows you where you are, and maybe the other MUDs would appreciate that as well, rather than just having to rely on two numbers that we don't know where they came from.
Is this a required format, or is this just made up by LJA?
It's from LJA because we have all of our districts rely on the engineer to make the determination as opposed to the directors themselves independently make the determination. The one who's best suited for, in the general MUD world, to be able to calculate whether or not you have hit that 95% threshold, because they're the ones who oversee your construction projects. They're the ones best suited to tell you or tell any board whether or not you're a developed district or not.
I'm gonna echo what Steve said, in that this is a very uninformative form. It tells us nothing about really what's going on. It just gives me two numbers and say, here you go, guys, trust me. I'll never want to see that again. But I understand why it's this way, but it's not good enough for our work. You can't have a beginning, you can't have two numbers and say the work is done. It begs a lot of questions.
But we certainly talk to the engineer and
I'm sure with the new study, we'll have, we better do it. We got a much better way of doing this. I know you guys aren't responsible.
Yeah.
We're just doing
I
that for the
recognize
record.
that, and just for the record.
We need a, we need
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it reluctantly.
Second,
Second, yeah.
all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Back to number 9. Adam?
Page 21, you should have packet of information. First couple pages of letter that looks like this. And I'll remind everyone, the tax rate setting process is a 2-step process. So all you're doing today is authorizing publication of your total tax rate. Next month, you'll hold your public hearing, and then you'll adopt and levy the tax rate and break it out between maintenance and operations and debt service tax rate. Keeping in mind, you want to publish the highest rate you'll consider, because next month you can always lower it. You just can't raise it without republishing. And so all that being said, if you look at the letter, assumption number 1, your 2025 certified value, that's as of January 1, came in just over 2.5 billion. That's a 7.3% increase over last year's 2.3 billion. Last year, you levied 5.5 cents for debt service, and it's look to the section for the next page. This is your outstanding debt service, so your outstanding principal and interest. And if you look in that middle column, we're proposing for your 2025 debt service tax rate, 5.5 cents. And if you move all the way to the right side, your debt service coverage, just to remind you, the TCEQ requires we maintain a minimum of 25% coverage every following year's debt service. And that is when you submit anything to the TCEQ. So you feasibly could go below that. However, TCEQ mandates that if you need to go out to market, that you need at least 25%. If you flip to the next page, this is probably more informative information. With respect to your maintenance tax rate in the top box, last year you levied 8.5 cents for maintenance and operations tax. That generated about 1.95 million. This year we're proposing 8 cents, which would generate 1.97 million. Your parity rate, if you wanted to raise the same number of dollars you did last year, 7.92 cents. And then currently you need roughly 6 3/4 pennies to balance your budget. Just remember the value of a penny in your district is $246,000. Middle box with respect to the average tax bills. Your average homestead last year, $476,569, meaning your average tax bill was $667. This year's average homestead went up to $508,808, meaning at the proposed 13.5 cent recommended rate, it would be a $687 tax bill or a $20 increase, percentage-wise 2.95%. The 2.95% is what Brian was alluding to. As a developing district, that 2.95% actually can't go above 8% as a developing district. If it does, then if 10% of your residents in the district petition for a rollback election, then you would have to hold that election. If it were successful, in the bottom box, all the way at the bottom line, your rollback rate would be 8.59 cents. So in a rollback rate scenario, just understand that your debt service tax rate is pledged to bonds. So the rollback rate would never impact that. It would only impact your M&O rate. And in this current recommended format, at 8 cents, you're below the 8.59 cents anyway. So you would never hold an election.
A couple questions on your assumptions.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead.
Now, my question was just, what was the basis for, going ahead and proposing the M&O, reducing that so that, instead, or overall being, instead of 0.14, being 0.135? I mean, I would think that maybe we would want to, particularly going into this period of uncertainty where there's a lot of expense coming down the road that we haven't quite defined just yet, that at this stage, early stage, we would want to hold the tax rate
You absolutely.
flat. And then once we get more information, as you say, we could potentially push it back, but we wouldn't want to go out into the public too soon
Right.
and show a lower rate necessarily. So that's just a question I have is, why not hold it flat? And I would offer for discussion with my colleagues here.
And it is a discussion with staff on the M&O side, how to proceed. And I think the idea being is, in a given scenario, if you are generating a surplus and, a half a penny is not too significant, then it's, you can consider it, but you never have to take our recommendation.
No.
As a board get to decide.
I was a little surprised to see it because when I looked at the draft budget that we received, I mean, there's a significant difference. We have a lot more expenses coming. Eric did a great job of explaining it. I think it made sense to me why we want to do it. Nonetheless, I mean, if you look at the bottom line, our net income this year is 1.6 million. It's going to drop to almost $400,000. That's a huge change. So we're losing some of the I don't know what to call it, a lockdown, but the stuff, the range that we needed to make sure that, as Paul explained very well last year, if expenses come up, we can handle it. So I do understand in an environment where our expenses are growing way up, our revenue's going a bit down, why we would be dropping the rate. I don't know that that's the final answer based on the work we have to see, but in terms of what you explained to us of publishing the highest rate that we could possibly go, I would recommend the same thing Steve did. We just keep it flat and get some more analysis done, because I think we have a lot more expenses coming than we have accounted for here. I think we need to consider those before we really finalize a rate.
Others? Anybody else?
So Eric, what's the likelihood that we would know something more about SFDUEs, for example, that study a month from now? Because we have to make a decision at the next meeting.
Well, that's only gonna be for wastewater treatment plant service area 1 right now. That's what we're focused on. So it wouldn't affect any of this for SFDUEs. For the dam project, we have been, the districts, several of the districts have authorized us to give them a recommendation on how they could proceed, particularly those that either really don't have a stake or don't have a whole lot of cash. So we'll be looking at how to kind of help them get to yes, if you will.
I might refer back to SJRA. Would we know, Ed, regarding this settlement that's been publicized, when the effective date of that would be?
Effective date was within 10 days of them signing the document, so that has occurred.
What's in effect?
To answer the question you haven't asked is,
Here come. I could ask it.
with the increased volume that Conroe is going to take, that should reduce the GRP rate by 4 cents on both the groundwater and surface water. And then there's still the question of what we're going to do with the money that they have paid for their arrears. In the contract or the settlement agreement, it's allowed for debt defeasance or for to put in the R&R fund for maintenance.
Ah, I didn't see that second part in the
So-
press release.
A couple of details that I did read, and they weren't in the subsequent report, but the 80-year term was reduced to 40 years for them.
Well, everybody else was already at 40.
Uh,
Here's the interesting part. Conroe went into that agreement asking for 80 at the advice of their attorneys. And then all of a sudden they want,
That's pretty fun.
sorry, they requested to go back to the 40.
Okay.
So you'll have, am I hearing that you'll have the numbers, revised numbers for the cost to Eric before the next, the final budget is done?
We will come in probably the September board meeting. Well, I know at our September board meeting, we will be doing budget amendments, GRP budget amendments for increased costs and lower rates. So those will probably go into effect October.
I got the implication from the first report I read that it says, we will pay the current rates.
Yes,
That said to me that they're not paying the penalties that were in there and the interest that was in there.
you are.
I don't know if you can respond to that.
You are correct. They're not, the penalties and interest were waived. So they're paying what they owed.
And each attorney fees are just eaten by the respective parties.
Correct. But they are taking more water.
That's good news. From a Woodland Water perspective and Mud 67 in particular, the more you defease, the more money that's put in the defeasance pot, the less money that's distributed to the participants. And I think we've footed the bill over these last decade. And I think we ought to lean toward refunds to the participants.
The settlement agreement is very specific about where the funds can be used. And a rebate was not an option.
Not an option.
It is not an option. You can either go debt defeasance or it can go to the R&R fund for maintenance.
Boy, I know who got the better of that.
I guess we
Yeah.
weren't at the table, were we?
Wow.
Well, if it goes into the R&R fund, will that change the way you budget the R&R fund going forward?
Well, because it's for maintenance,
Yeah.
I think you've heard that we have membranes to replace up there. So replacing using those funds to replace maintenance or using those funds to replace the membranes.
Yeah,
That falls under maintenance.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out if any of that's gonna roll back to us. And
No, sir.
No way, no way at all.
And with the additional water that,
They've guaranteed a minimum groundwater volume of 4 billion gallons a year. And then their surface water volume goes from 5.3 to 7 with a max to 10, or an annual average of 8.5.
and for us, are y'all looking at increasing our volume and then what we might do regarding the trihalomethane?
I know there's been conversation about you all increasing your surface water volume, and that has not been addressed.
But if we do go much beyond or above where we are now, we would need a trihalomethane treatment of some kind.
There's some membrane, or not membrane.
Aeration.
The study kicked off this month.
Okay, so it's underway.
It's in the packet. It's a new project that started. I wanted to see what that would look like if we went up to whatever, what's the
Good.
trigger point, 65, 70, whatever it is. And what that would cost in terms of additional filters or whatever.
And would that expense be borne by all the GRP participants?
The disinfection byproducts.
Yeah. Methane
We
treatment.
did a study for all the participants last year, and that information is going to be used in this study that is just for the woodlands. It's based off of stuff Eric had mentioned a few
If we
months.
took more, the woodlands would be looking at funding that expense, or it'd be part of the GRP.
The capital investment,
Yeah.
it's non-mandatory to increase, so that should be a part of the woodlands.
Mm.
Because you're asking to go higher than where you already said.
If there were regulations that said you had to be at 70% surface water, 30%, different story. No regulations.
So Ed, back to a comment you made early on. You said it was a 4 cent, additional 4 cent reduction.
Yes.
So that would be effective immediately also, is that correct?
As soon as the budget amendments are done, yes.
292 becomes 288.
Correct. Because the budget already has a 5% reduction. So this total would be 9.
Thank you very much for your report. I really appreciate the information.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Now, just for some additional discussion on the tax rate. The proposal that's in the packet still shows an increase of about $20 to the average homeowner. Even at the reduced tax, right, that you're,
That does not include the over age 65 and disabled exemption, is that correct?
that's my understanding,
That's
correct?
correct.
It does not include.
That's not included.
Just the average homeowner in the Woodlands,
Exactly. It's just the homestead that's included in
Yeah.
that. That's it.
not the over 60.
I'd like to make a motion, if we can, that we publish the current rate as our top rate and let the budget work proceed and figure out where we want to land next month.
What would be the increase to the average homeowner if we publish the current rate? What would that look like?
$25.
How much?
Well, so half a penny, so it's 122,000.
$45 instead of 20, it'd be 45.
6.7%.
6% now are between, now you are availing yourself of the developing district status because you're over 3.5.
But you're under 8. So you're
I'm not saying that's the final number. I just don't want to lock ourselves in and we get a surprise to do the
Exactly.
next
That's
I'll
month.
second that motion.
I'm still in.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks.
now we need to publish it in the
Earlier.
Courier.
Has to be in general.
Item 10, SCRA, Chris?
What's in your packet on page 24? Nothing out of the ordinary, no violations. I don't have anything to add, but be happy to answer any questions if you have or go through anything.
Hearing none. Item 11, discuss and interact on water line renewal plan analysis completed by HDR engineer.
All right, put this on all the agendas just to give the MUD's opportunity to talk about the topic, to update you on what went on at the trustee meeting. The trustees did unanimously vote to proceed with the redesign of town center and easement acquisitions. So that leaves 6 projects that were recommended by the experts to contemplate what to do with. I am working with a handful of directors that still have some questions that we're working through with HDR. And then likely what we'll do once we get a little further with that, we'll set a meeting up with SDRA to talk through kind of where to place some of those projects and why and how they kind of came together. So that's kind of the path forward at this point. And then, as you recall, we really need to, SDRA has requested clarification on all this by November 1 at the latest.
Question for SDR on that November 1. Is it possible to slide that till after our November 1 meeting so that we have time to vote on or can work together with our trustees to build that? Because one's just in front of a couple of weeks, so which could still be working.
The November 1 date was offered so that we could get our 10-year project plans underway and have them ready for January, February to start talking to the MUD. And so by sliding that, that does create a little bit of a delay in us finishing the 10-year project.
Yeah, well, if we get the right answer and if that extra time buys us the right answer, it'd be worth
It
it.
does require some duplication of effort on our part in redoing 10-year project plan.
Good to know.
Anything else?
I have I have something I want to talk about, but I didn't know if Eric was done with his.
That's all, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I made a little PowerPoint presentation I'm one of the people that's been digging in. Do you have a copy of this? So I'd like you to get one if you can.
You can have mine.
Yeah. What's that? So I've been one of the directors that's been digging in. I just want to, I'll do this quickly. I didn't know some of us was going to duplicate with what Eric just said, but I want to remind everybody that was a very positive work that we did. We spent like $1.5 million and we got the findings on this first page. So I think good. We learned about brakes being important. We learned that age wasn't as important. We reduced the AC pipeline activity for the next 10 years from 235 million to 65. And we found building blocks, I call them, 7 projects that will replace 21 miles of pipe for $120 million. Those are good things that came out of that report. If you look at the lower part of that first page, it's very interesting. We constantly, what I have here is a chart that most under HDR, those are the things that HDR told us in our conversations, how they would rank things looking at different factors. And this came out in the directors querying them. So you can see on the left, that's the factors that are in that 500-page report. And they rank, the tiers are colored, red is 1, yellow 2, and blank is 3. So we're common with that. And there's where the town center and the Woodlands Parkway were on number 1. If you look at their desktop risk only, then they highlighted 2 projects, the Parkway and Grogan's Mill. If you look at only the measured conditions when they actually went out and took samples, the 2 ones that stood out as tier 1 are town center and the trade center. So you see these things are varying. And then we finally got down to it and said, hey, of all these measurements that we took, using your engineering judgment, what would you say bottom line is your measurements? What's your judgment that would rank these projects? And what they ranked is they said there's no doubt in their mind, Woodlands Parkway was number 1, there's a group at number 2, and there's a group at number 3. And so what I did is I just took all those numbers and averaged them, so I could come up with a ranking. And as you can see, it came up exactly the same as their judgment thing. So mine's just statistical. But what that tells us is 2 things. One, we're going to do the town center. We've all agreed. In fact, I made the motion to do the town center. But the sense that, yes, these projects are critical is true, but they're not extremely urgent. If they were, you would take the work that you already have done at the town center and say, let's pause that. Let's get to something that's really urgent. And nobody said that. So there's a little bit of subjectness in what's ranked first, but I thought it was important to see how variable it can be depending on what factors you like to look at. So I found that to be informative I think the other thing I find informative is there's clearly some top numbers that need to be worked, and the bottom ones can probably be put on there. So why am I doing this presentation? I heard at the directors meeting that some of us were micromanaging, and I think that's true. I think I have a lot of experience. I've been presenting to boards for probably 10 years of my career, and I sat as the head of the board on the boards for 5 to 7 years. So I have both sides of this, and I was involved in private enterprise. I had a budget of $1 billion. I had to go to the board and present the work to be done. And when I was on the board, I had to see the work and approve it. Typically, in that position, I get the information I need to say, that project makes a lot of sense. I understand what you did on it. Here, let me push and prod a little bit on it. Let's get the right project and then risk it right and time it right, and off we go. This was not in the HDR report. There's 500 plus pages, and each project is pretty much synthesized in a page and a half, of which is mostly maps. And it doesn't go into the project detail. And when I talked to other directors that didn't have the time I did to go into the data, I realized they didn't really understand what was in each product or each project. So I said, well, we'll do some little bit of work. The project phases that I normally go through are listed in the bottom there. You do your cleanup of your data, you take a look at the scope of each of the projects, then you rank them, then you time them, and then you finance them. And I got a little fearful when I heard the trustees talking about, let's get the finance plan done. Well, that's great if you got the other things done, but I don't think we do. And I'll show you, the data cleanup's almost done. We've had a lot of give and take with HDR and SJRA, and they've been very helpful. And I think we're all kind of in agreement that the data is about right, and we can look at the data. You turn the page to this big spreadsheet. We got a huge spreadsheet of 1,000 line segments, and it has, I don't even know how many columns, 100 maybe. So I synthesized it down for just one project, the Woodlands Mall. It's it is the lowest cost of all the projects that we did. And you can see there's 29 line segments in that project. And I also highlighted in yellow some of the things that I think are key. Remember, break data is really important. So if you look in the blue column there, you see the breaks. The Woodlands Mall segments, the 29 lines, they've had a total of 11 breaks that are restricted to 5 pipeline segments. If you look at the likelihood of failure, they're high, very high or high. Everything below that is low or lower. If you go over to the risk reasons, the consequence of failure, you'll see one is the highest, and that has what they thought was a hospital. I am in debate to them what a hospital is. I don't know if the hospitals have been named properly. I found medical offices called hospitals, and I could be wrong. But of the 7 I asked about, I could find 2 that were definitely a hospital. It was the Nexus Hospital. The other 5 were doctors' offices, rehab. So it just shows about cleaning up data. You want to get it right. So bottom line, when you're looking at, when you look really closely at this, there's 5 projects, because risk mitigate is the one they use the most. There's 5 to 7 line segments that are really critical to the Woodlands Mall project. The rest have low risk, according to the experts. However, and this is where I'm lacking, and I think we really need to work with River Authority, because you guys are the experts. I'm sure some of these lower priority lines tie in to the lines that are at risk, extreme risk, and need to be replaced. But I can't see that because I don't have the maps or your expertise. So this is why when you hear other directors asking what's going on in the project, and you start tearing it apart or micromanage it, you start saying, oh, I've got questions about what's in that project. Once I get the answers, then I can have I can define a project and say, yeah, let's go with that, Ed. Take a look at this next page. It's just another way to look at the data I just showed you, because the 2 things I thought were important on that sheet were breaks and mitigated risk. That's what we talked about a lot with HDR. There's a complete break data for all 20, whatever there were, segments. You can see the total of 11. And I gave you on the top, I get it by dates, because what they've told us is the more frequent the dates or breaks, the more important that line is. So you can see, I apologize for my lousy graphic. I haven't figured out how to do this yet. They've changed Excel. But you look, a number of those breaks are before 2015, 2017. So you ask yourself, but that's all that's happened. Maybe it's not all that important. I don't know unless we sit down with the River Authority. If you look at the mitigated risk, that to me is the outstanding thing, because they said this is a critical measurement to tell you what pipes to replace. And you can see almost all of them are really low. Just like the spreadsheet look with the color. And all this comes together and just says, I want us to get together. So what are my recommendations? They're on the last page. I think we've got really good building blocks. The town center is gone. They were doing engineering, and that's okay. I think it's an important project to do. There's no reason to really dig into that unless River Authority says, hey, we have some questions, or we want you to know about this. Nothing. So we take that out, that leaves 6. If you remember the very first page I showed you, 2 of those things were really low risk. And I'd like to, we could put those aside for now, put them on a watch list for later, build something in the last year of the 10-year plan, or the last 3 years. To me, the ones that are most important are the remaining 4. And they all have questions about them. They have distributions of breaks and timing of breaks that are different. And but all of them, except Grogan's Mill, has a few at the very top that are high risk, and everything else is low risk. And I'd like us to get together, the directors that are interested, and possibly HDR, but definitely with the River Authority, and go, let's go through these. Let's get a good map, because I don't have a good map of breaks, line segments, measured values. I just don't have it. I'm not a GIS guy. I haven't been able to make it. But what I can do is sit there with you guys and you say, yeah, these low priority pipes connected to high risk pipes, just take them all out. Done. But until I see that, I have a little trouble understanding what's in that project. And that's why I suggest a couple work sessions, we get together, go through the project and say, okay, and people that can't buy in, they can't buy in. But I believe that with some of the rational engineers that have been micromanaging would also see what you're doing and say, understand it. So we get rid of a lot of this noise and we can actually go forward together. Lastly, if we can get the projects defined, then I think the rankings are going to show up pretty quickly. We already said those last one's already getting done. 2 are so low risk. Don't worry about it. There's only 4 to rank. And I'm pretty darn sure I know Woodlands Parkway is number 1, but that's my bias. So I think it gets pretty easy. And then if we can do that, timing is nothing. And then we can do the financing. So I think together, that's how I would like to see a project run. That's how I run them. If we start doing the financing now and we start arguing about what's in the project, we've wasted our time. Because it's possible we can take $1 or $2 million out of some projects if the low priority pipes really don't connect to anything important and kind of are on the fringes. So that's my recommendation. Eric suggested we can get together, and I appreciate that. But I wanted people to see why there's been micromanaging, if you will, people concerned about what's in the projects, because we tried to dig through it and we had trouble. And you can see there's some things in there that are really outstandingly important to get done, and others not so much. So I'm sorry to take up so much time. But I appreciate the opportunity to show you what's in just one of the projects so you can understand better some of the questions that we're asking. That was about it. Any questions?
I think we're happy to sit down and have a conversation.
You guys know so much more than any of the directors on what's going on out there. We could get there, and that's my, so thank you for offering that. And if Eric is on board, we can try to get that organized. And I think it'd be fun, actually. I've learned a lot about what you guys do, and we can get it done. So we can
We're happy to issue a hard hat and a safety vest and
the meeting, what's going to be
a
a
top
meeting?
that's 40 foot deep that we need some extra help on.
No, I appreciate your willingness. I really do. I think together we can get the answers and get the questions that the finance guys need to start scheduling how we do this. I'd really like to do that with you.
I'll work with Eric to get
Thank you.
things set up.
Okay, item 12, discuss and/or act on Bear Branch Dam modification project, spillway reconstruction, and dam safety assessment.
Talked a lot about that earlier. I don't know that I have much to add. I think I mentioned 4 out of the 5 non-stakeholder MUDs have looked at it, and all 4 have at least said, we'll see if we can come up with something that works for us. But they may not be able to put those full amounts in. So once we kind of get that and present that back to them next month, then we'll be able to kind of shore up how everything falls out.
I had one comment for page 45. I don't know if it's a bust or if it's my bad math. I'm looking at mud commitment on phase 1. It says it's 1.4. And I know that we have 1.1. And then I thought that the additional money might be the 10%.
So 1.1 is what's been already paid to us from the 5 months. And it may be my memory. I was thinking the total commitment by the 5 months was 1.4. It might be 1.6, so it's in that ballpark. But I used 1.4.
I'm confused. Okay, I don't know. I guess I thought that was the 10% of the funding, 3.6.
No, sir.
That's not.
No. The 10% of the 3.6 is basically $360,000.
Yeah, where does that go?
That's pulled out because that's retained by the Corps.
Okay, so it's not coming in, so it doesn't really count. And
It was part of the total of 3.6, but they pulled it right off the top.
Okay, but I don't know where the other 300,000 is coming from. There's another place we said we committed 1.1. That's all. It's just, I didn't understand it.
No. You paid 1.1. You committed somewhere between 1.4 and 1.6. To total all 5
Yeah.
months.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Jim, does that ring a bell with you, Jim?
No,
No.
go back and retreat it.
It's a simple answer, no.
So the original project was, the estimate was 5.2.
Right.
And we applied for 3.6 through the Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
They took the
That's where
10%.
the 1.6 comes
That's
from.
why you see 3.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And so the MUDs agreed to offset the difference.
I just thought that.
That's the local match.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm off by 200,000 on the 4.86.
That's what I didn't understand. Thank you.
Okay, item 13, receive update regarding status of Bear Branch, Panther Branch Research Forest Drive Drainage Improvement Projects.
Yeah, quick update on that. We came to my attention an opportunity to look for additional funding in a new spot. Ed brought an opportunity to my attention, which we dug into. And basically to learn what the Corps of Engineers programs were available. We actually met with the Corps of Engineers a couple weeks ago to talk about what those options might be. And they presented an opportunity under one of their programs that might have the potential to fund the entire delta of what's short at the moment that we've been trying to look for. And so the way the program would work would be, first step, they would application, we have to fill out an application, send that in. Then they would get that and start reviewing the aspects of our project, just on a very, very high level, just to even see if it's even a starter or not. If they believe that it is, then they would request funding from the Fed of $10,000 for them to do their official due diligence, where they would then go in and really dig into the numbers, dig into the models and the reports, do cost benefit analysis, everything they've got to do on there and to check the boxes to identify if the project is viable to be a partnered type project with the municipalities and the Corps. If at that, and that's, they mentioned that that's probably about a 90-day due diligence. So not that the whole schedule's 90 days, but that $10,000 due diligence that they would do to identify whether to go forward or not. It's about 90 days once they get authorized with that. If they get to that point and have come to the conclusion that it is a project that they would want to partner with, then we would potentially be eligible to go after the delta, in this case, about $10 million in return for about a 60% match. The $11.3 million that we have is about 57%. So we're right there, real close to that. And one of the other, I'll say, caveats or trade-offs is when we went for the $5 million that was caps from Crenshaw on the dam, we still control that project. If you go into this other program, then the Corps takes it over and runs the project to completion. So that would be one of the trade-offs. But in my mind, if we can potentially get at that entire delta, and then all we really have to lose at this point is just the time to go through that, to have them go through their process to look at this. So
Is this done out of the local office in Galveston?
that's who we met with. I don't know if it stays there with all of the diligence or not, as far as which personnel do it, but that's who we met with.
I think they said that once it goes to like construction, looking at drawings and approving them, it goes to a different.
But all the application,
Yes, sir.
all that would be
Local
coordinated through
structure,
local.
yes.
Good, that's.
Would the River Authority have any participation, oversight, bringing things to us, or just, it's just completely our relationship with the Corps?
I mean, I would think
I don't
we
know.
would all be involved.
I don't know, so I'm curious.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't take it away. They would just lead the project. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we would still be involved. But, if it's like, for instance, the other project, it's gonna be an estuary project and estuary is gonna manage that contractor. And we're involved in that too, but this project, the Corps would take it over and they would run it.
I bet no one's managing the Corps.
And keep in mind, the area that's where the construction would occur is San Jacinto River Authority property.
Correct.
So
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So we would be involved
Good.
just because we would be accepting the project when it's finished.
I wanted to be involved, yeah, that's my concern.
So I thought this is a worthwhile endeavor. The application is very short, has to go to the Corps by the end of the month. And then they asked that, well, one of the requests or requirements is to get letters of support. And he specifically said from Congressman or Fed legislator, which I think we can get there. And then I asked, what about local leadership, the state and local? And they said, wouldn't hurt, because, one of the things that they want to know, if they're going to partner with the municipality, is that the project is supported by the community. So I've had preliminary discussions with the township. I think we talked to a number of other local leaders, as well as all the MUD presidents, and have individual letters of support for the project that we can put in that application to the Corps.
I'm glad the attorney's back. What happens to the agreement that we have with the state of Texas and the 0% loans and all of the other MUDs that are involved in that process? You're saying they're going to take over. What happens to all that apparatus?
I mean, I think all that's still in play. I mean, that's your match in terms of those funds that would go into this
We
project.
have to see what the deal looked like. We don't talked about how if the feds did provide this additional funding, they'd want to take over the project. So we have to see what that documentation from them looks like. And then, of course, we have to modify our agreement among the current participants that calls for MUD 67 to manage the project, to address the fact that the Corps is now coming in and taking it over, and the Corps will take over responsibility for the project in place of MUD 67. We're not there yet, but we would have to deal with those sins on paperwork.
And after their due diligence, they say, it doesn't meet the minimums, et cetera, then we go back and do what we were on track for, is just to look locally. But I think this is a worthwhile step.
Pretty encouraging, yeah.
I agree.
Well done.
It has the highest potential impact if it's successful, I think. That's probably the best way to say it, versus getting a few bucks here and there from,
Yeah, we asked you to go out and find some money, boy, you got on it.
wow. We're
Just
not
talk
there
to my
yet.
wife for me.
Not there yet. We got some work to do.
So in a related matter, the arbitrage compliance specialist, pardon me, sent out a new report. If you recall, they sent one out and said we owed money back based on the interest we had earned on the original 6.550 million. And this revised report updated it through May 31st of 25. And we really should distribute this and make an agenda item next month, I think, to discuss more of the details on it. But I took the liberty of trying to project where we would be on this, based on this analysis, the revised analysis, and discussed it with Maureen. And I think what we need to do is to set up a reserve as of 9/30/25 for the existing conditions, regardless of what may or may not happen moving forward. So that, again, that money is identified on the books for Bear Branch on their balance sheet, and the liabilities recorded, and we got this funds identified. And what happens next year sounds like it's up for debate. So if we could put that, I guess, skipping ahead, Mr. Chairman, for an agenda item for next month to discuss in detail.
Okay, Shelley, will you put that on? Okay. 14, consider an act on pay application number 1 for retail wastewater collection within rehab.
Okay, y'all are partners in, with total 9 months in the project to do the sanitary sewer rehabilitation project that's underway, that started a couple months ago. This is just the first pay application for it. MUD 67 has no work that was done in the first 45 days, so there's no action to be taken, no expense this month. You do have portions coming, they just didn't happen to do the work specifically in 67 this month.
Okay, thank you.
There's 36 participating.
No.
So it's 9.
That's the 9. Correct, yeah, those are the 9.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Nope, that's right.
15, discuss and or act on adding WWE email addresses to the MUD 67 website.
I think that was asked last month to put on the agenda. I think we reported or at least talked that we can do it with a drop-down menu on the website so that the email address, so the public could email you directly, but your email address specifically wouldn't be written so to avoid spamming and all the other things. So if that's something you want to do, we can do that. We're able to do that. We didn't know we could until last month. We were figuring it out.
Well, I'd like to do it.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Support it, I'm good.
Paul?
And it's the Woodlands Water email, not
It's the water, it's the email that the directors
signs us.
signed us to use. Not all of them are using water.
But they won't see that. They'll see you and a link to us and they'll come to that email address without them knowing it.
Until you respond, then they
If I-
will see it.
If I dare respond. Okay,
Then they will see it.
that's fair.
Yep.
Okay, good.
All those, everybody's in favor?
Yeah,
Okay, fine.
yeah, I make a motion for it too.
16, receive the attorney's report.
Not much to add today. The legislature, you may have seen, is back in session, so we are monitoring that. I don't think much is going to happen in this 30-day session besides redistricting and maybe something with the Hill Country. There's probably going to be more special sessions after this for everyone. Yeah. Have to answer questions if you have them.
When do we start the new time period for agenda?
Next
recommendation?
month,
So the September meeting, we need to be when again? So we can all remember?
there's got to be a 3 business day gap. And so it's I'm talking about actual posting the agenda. So
Yeah.
essentially we have to post the agenda a week before the board meeting. So Eric will have a lead time to get agenda items before that.
Yeah, 2 Fridays before the week.
Okay, so
We will start and then we will finalize it that Friday and Monday, and then we have to post by Tuesday by 4 o'clock. on-
so you would like our agenda items 2 Fridays before our meeting?
Mhm.
Okay, that's easy to remember. That's good. We don't like the time, but it is what it is. No, it's not your fault. I didn't vote for that. Who voted for that?
That gives
It's
us,
gonna, yeah, it's wrong. Could you put that in a special session for us?
No, they voted to go the other way.
They made a mistake. What are your consultants doing? You
Transparency.
got lobbyists.
18, general manager's report.
okay. We've covered a lot already, and so just have a couple minor things left. Just want to remind everybody of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation meeting, district meetings coming up, the GMA 14 meeting on September 17th, and then the MUD information meeting on the September 18th, the next day. We talked about the SFDUE updates, and we're working on. Township has put an agenda item on their meeting this week to talk about mobility due to flooding throughout the Woodlands, and asked for us to talk a little bit about Bear Panther, that project. And so, and I think they've asked to also have Estuary talk about the Spring Creek Drainage Project as well on the west, kind of on the other side.
That could be fun.
So I'm going to talk just a little bit about, I'm not going to get into all the details of the core and all that, but just that we've, had the modeling and we've identified some things, and we're looking for funding. And then we'll probably talk a little bit about the dam, just because that's tied into the overall drainage area. So you'll see me doing that on Thursday. And then with that, kick it to John for the communications update.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Page 75 is your communications report. We are nearing the end of our third quarter of our strategic plan with focus on water conservation. Abandon that topic, but we'll put a brighter light on value. 3 months. Infrastructure renewal communications, so that continues to progress. We've got a couple elements will be added to the website here soon. That website did get 1,700 unique visitors last month. Continues to trend upward. So I think that's pretty good considering where we are in our timeline. We'll be adding a GIS-based interactive map. I'll have the project sheets there so folks can zoom in, see what projects are in their area, get information that way. There is a renewal video in production. Anticipate that being finished here before we meet again. And that's going to be a nice primer on what infrastructure renewal is. It's going to feature 8 to 10 folks with short clips interjected in there. And we'll be able to piece that up and use short reels on social media and make okay of it. So we'll have that out soon. The community working group, their 6th meeting is tentatively scheduled for the 10th. We need to make sure that date works for HDR. So that group is going to hear about waterline assessment, get that presentation from HDR. If that doesn't work, then it will be shortly thereafter. So marketing materials in the next few pages, and then you'll see an outreach calendar on page 78. That's going to continue to fill up as fall comes on. I'll be out at Kroger's Mill Farmers Market this Saturday, excuse me. So if you have to be out there, stop by. Good to see you again, John.
Yeah. I want to compliment you on your Facebook, I guess you call them reels. I love
The short videos.
I like the music. It goes along with your message. So you guys are doing a good job there.
Yeah, with our new social media specialist, Stephanie Williams, she's been doing a lot of
doing a good
advertising. So I'll pass that on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Item 19, trustees report, Paul.
I think we said it all.
Amen.
Do we have any reason? Okay. Any other matter for future agenda?
I'd like to see that, the water line stuff still on. I think that was good. The way Eric wrote that agenda gives us a lot of flexibility. I know we didn't make any decisions. I'd say that I have to rethink that. Maybe we do. If we stick to November 1st, this is our September meeting. We have September and October. Nope.
This is October.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this is August.
Yes, September. So that's good. No,
Okay,
got that.
meeting is adjourned.